Hello and welcome to the second of my 10 15-minute yoga classes for complete beginners. Last time I sat facing you with my legs crossed. Today I'm sitting on my heels in a different pose which explores one of the many or the second of the many different ways to sit on the floor. So I'm sitting on my heels, my knees and feet together, my hands on my thighs, and I'm lifting my chest, tucking my chin, and just assuming a nice, elegant pose that's healthy for the spine. From here, I'm going to get into a twist. Twisting, an important aspect of yoga. So I take the right arm up and bring it down behind me, and then I take the left arm up and bring it firmly down on the outside of my right shin. And look over my right shoulder and breathe. So this twisting poses, massages your paraspinal muscles and helps to keep your back healthy and mobile. Inhale to the front, left arm up, bring the hand down behind you, take the right arm up and bring it across the left thigh. And the reason I turn the palm up is because I want to keep the chest open. If the hand faced down, it would help the chest to remain slumped. So I'm keeping my body erect, so my spine is vertical, not leaning back, and I look over my left shoulder and keep my eyes roughly parallel to the ground. And breathe. Always breathing through the nose. And then I inhale and come to the front, take my knees apart, and I'm going to move into child's resting pose. So I'm going to walk my hands forwards and sit on my heels. So this is a great pose for building deep flexion in the hips, the knees, and extension in the ankles. Extension means back bending, flexion means forward bending. Extending the arms ahead, and there's some complexity here as well. It might seem straightforward, but I want you to try and keep your sit bones pressing into your heels and walking your hands further ahead without lifting the sit bones up. Keep your buttocks pressing down. Keep the chest moving towards the floor. Can you consider your shoulders moving down and away from your ears? The arms are straight at the elbows. So even though this is a child's resting pose, it's also very energetic when performed effectively. Now walk your hands in, come up onto your hands and knees, tuck your toes under. Let's go into that traditional famous yoga pose, downward dog. So I'm going to tilt the tailbone up to begin with, and then continue that tilt as I come up into downward dog. So we'll be doing downward dog probably in most classes that we do in this series of 10. It's a very important pose because it works so much. It's considered an inversion because the head is below the heart, so it's good for the heart. It builds a lot of upper body strength too, because there's quite a lot of weight in your arms, and because the arms are over the head, it's working the shoulders, and then you press the thighs back and the heels down, and it's working the hamstrings, the calves, and so on. Keep trying to tilt the tailbone up even as you do this, rather than rounding your back. And come forward into plank. Let's hold plank like we did last time. It's an important pose. Keep in a straight line. Let's do side plank. So we're going to repeat some of the poses we did last time and do some new poses. Come into plank, keeping in a straight line across to the other side. I always do plank and side plank with the feet apart. So side plank, the heels come to the ground. It enables me to move from side to side more effectively. And then come back to the center, walk your feet into downward facing pose. So just a standing forward fold, and then let the back of the head relax down. Put the hands in the hip crease, bend the knees, inhale, and come on up. Let's once again practice Tadasana, the standing pose. This time I want you to stand with your heels against the wall, and
I want you to feel the heels, the calves, the buttocks, the shoulder blades, and the back of the head all touching the wall. This might feel very strange because you may have been spending much of your life with your head jutting forwards or your hips jutting forwards, compensating. I'm going to turn the palms forwards and roll the shoulder blades under. And then I'm going to step away from the wall and see if I can maintain that nice vertical stance and practice this from time to time to remind myself what standing tall really feels like. So last time we did Warrior Two pose, an extended side angle. Today we're going to do a set of poses that face not the long edge of the mat, but the short edge. So I'm going to take my 2 blocks. You might have plastic blocks. I've got wooden ones, and I'm going to put them at the end of the mat like this and stand in front of them in Tadasana. So I'm standing tall. Hopefully I'm standing with a good posture, and I'm going to place my hands on my hips, and I'm going to step the right leg back. Now, the reason my hands are on the hips is because I want to keep these hips facing the short edge of the mat. Don't let the hips turn to the right. And then inhale the arms over the head, and then exhale forward, keeping the spine as long and straight as possible and resting my hands on the blocks. Now, I could rest my hands on the floor, but I don't want you to do that today. I want you to keep the back long and straight. You need to learn to pivot at the hips and not round the back. My kneecaps are drawn up, both legs are perfectly straight. Don't let the front leg bend. And stretch the mat apart. Inhale, come on up, bring the hands down. And now we're going to move into the second pose on this side, which is Warrior One. So I'm going to step the right leg back a little bit further and bend the left leg to a right angle. Inhale the arms over the head. See, it's a beautiful pose. Warrior One is a magnificent, energized pose. Visualize yourself as that powerful warrior, spiritual warrior here in yoga. And then we're going to transition into Warrior Three. So I want you to use the blocks for this, particularly as you're a beginner. So let's bring the hands down onto the blocks. Take the blocks with you, step forwards, and keep your hands on the blocks for now, and take the back leg straight out behind you. So I'm keeping my body as best I can in a straight line. I want my back foot to be the height of my hips if possible, the hips to be level, and a nice long stance. So we're building strength in the standing leg, keeping it very straight. And then I'm going to come out of the pose the same way I went in, bending my front leg and coming back into Warrior One, straightening the front leg and bringing the hands down. And I'm going to step up to the head of the mat. Bring my blocks back into place, and we're going to do this on the other side. So remember, pyramid pose is the first pose, stepping the left foot back along a fair distance. Keeping the hips, using my hands to keep the hips facing the short edge of the mat. Bring the arms over the head, and then exhale forwards, coming down onto the blocks. It's often hard to tell whether your back is in a straight line or whether it's humped like this. We want to work on finding a greater sense of, it's called proprioception, knowing where body is in space. Coming out of this pose, stretching the mat apart with the feet, keeping the legs straight. Inhale, coming up, placing the hands on the hips. Now I'm going to take my left foot back a little bit further and bend the right knee to a right angle. I'm working on keeping my left heel down and then inhaling the arms over the head as I get into Warrior One. You can interlace your fingers if you want to get more lift through the shoulders. And then we're going to move into Warrior Three with the hands on the blocks, modified. Separate the hands, bring the hands down onto the blocks, step forwards, and come up into Warrior Three. So the blocks help me to get used to the pose. It's a very difficult pose, very challenging in terms of strength and balance. Coming out of the pose, bending the front knee, gliding back into Warrior One, straightening the front leg, and this time I'm going to bring my hands onto my hips, turn and face the long edge of the mat, and come into a resting pose, which is parallel feet and coming forwards. You could take the blocks with you
and put your hands on the blocks. Or you can put your hands lower or even on the floor and let your head drop. Keep your legs vertical and always the kneecaps are drawn up. Whenever your legs are not consciously bent, they're very consciously straight. Put the hands in the hip crease, bend your knees, and come up to standing. So from here, we're going to come into another back bend. So come down on the floor. We're going to work on the locust pose, Shalabhasana, very great for strengthening the hamstrings and the back. So lay down on your front. You start off with your forearms under you, just like we did in the first class, the Cobra, Bhujangasana, and then we take the hands straight back, palms up, toes together, heels apart, and then inhale, exhale. Just lift your feet and your head a little off the ground. You don't have to come up very high, just the very act of lifting engages the muscles of the back and the hamstrings and the back of the legs. Hold this, and then come down. Okay, Shalabhasana, the locust. So we're going to come up, and we're going to practice seated forward fold. So once again, I'm going to put some height under my buttocks, like this, and take a strap. So today we're going to do a pose called head to knee pose. The legs straight out in front of you, like this. So we always start in the staff pose to begin with, and then I bend the right leg and drop it out to the side. Let it drop down. Turn to face the short edge, the long, turn to face the straight leg, and you can either reach the foot like this, but I prefer most people to use a strap because I think it helps you to do the pose with more functional efficiency. So I put the strap around the foot and sit up tall. So in order to get hold of the foot with your hands, you may have to round your back in a way that is not safe for the spine. So I'm sitting up tall and then consciously pivoting at the hip crease and just coming gently forwards into Janu Sirsasana, head to knee pose. The left leg is very straight, the right knee is pressing down, and I'm pivoting at the hip crease. Inhale, come on up, switch sides. So the right leg becomes very straight and active. The left leg bends, comes in, drops out to the side. I face my torso towards the right leg, and I'm going to hold on to the right leg. Hold on to the foot with a strap, sit up tall, and then exhale, come forwards, but only as far as I can without rounding the back. Don't do yourself a disservice by trying to get your head down to your knee. You'll only do it by rounding the back, not pivoting at the hips. And here we are. Janu Sirsasana. And then inhale and come on up. So from here, we're going to move into Shavasana from here. So our 15 minutes comes and goes very quickly. So once again, I'd like you to put the blanket behind your head, and we'll talk about some of the things you need to be aware of when you're practicing Shavasana. So I just take a little turn in the blanket under my neck, just to give my back of my neck some support. Straighten one leg at a time, turn the feet out, roll the shoulders under, turn the palms up, close my eyes softly. And then I just become aware of my breath. Most of the day, most of our lives, we breathe unconsciously. When we breathe consciously, a different part of the brain is involved, and we turn on the relaxation response. And this is one of the gifts of yoga, is conscious breathing. And Shavasana gives us an opportunity to practice that without distraction. So a very short Shavasana. We're going to bend the knees, roll off to the side. Gently bring yourself up to sitting, cross your legs. And I hope this second class has been helpful.
I look forward to teaching you the further 8 as we become progressively more knowledgeable, efficient at yoga and reap the benefits of this marvelous practice.